As we get closer to Election Day, a new ABC 10 News Union-Tribune poll is giving more insight into how San Diegans view the 2024 race. Joining us to break it down in the new poll is UCSD political science professor Thad Kouser. Now, Thad, let me ask you first of all about, if we take a look at some of these results, San Diegans were asked whether Harris's addition to the race would change how likely they were to vote, to turn out. And 51% said they now are more likely to cast a ballot, clearly higher enthusiasm than before she entered the race. What do you think that'll have as far as impact, at least here in San Diego?
Well, this is the hope of Democrats, really, not only in reliably blue places like San Diego, but across the country, especially in battleground states, right? That Kamala Harris's entry into the race will galvanize Democrats, especially those constituencies, young voters, voters from community of color who have been voicing concerns about Joe Biden, or had been voicing concerns about Joe Biden's candidacy. Now they seem to be energized by Kamala Harris. And if you looked at the partisan breakdown, it was really Democrats who overwhelmingly, those were the ones who said they would be more likely to vote based on her entry into the race.
And now San Diegans were also weighed in on the job approval of both Harris and Trump. 53% either strongly approve or somewhat approve of Harris's performance as vice president. And let's compare that to Trump. Only 37% approved of his performance when he was president. He also has a bigger disapproval rating. So when you look at that in San Diego, and this has to be filtered, of course, all through the fact that this is San Diego, and in California, a blue state, as you point out.
Yeah, I think this poll tells us two things, right? It tells us something about this race, right? This number especially tells us that Kamala Harris is in her honeymoon period, right? This is a state where even in blue California, Joe Biden's approval ratings had slipped quite low. But we see now strong approval ratings, at least for the time being, for Kamala Harris. But this also tells us something about San Diego. San Diego wasn't always this reliably blue county. In fact, it wasn't until Barack Obama's election in 2008 that it became reliably Democratic. It used to be a Republican bastion that was red in presidential race after presidential race. Then it became a purple area. But now we've seen, really in the era of Donald Trump, we've seen San Diego being reliably blue going by about 20 percentage points for Democratic candidates, and it looks like Kamala Harris is generating the same type of support here.
And that's all reflected, of course, in the numbers, the bottom line numbers, where in our poll, Harris has a 21-point lead over Trump if the election were held today. That is a pretty big lead.
Yeah, and looks like that's been the numbers that we've seen on Election Day in the last couple of elections for Hillary Clinton, for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. It looks like a pretty good predictor of where we might be by Election Day, both in San Diego and the state as a whole, because we tend to be a microcosm of a state that is now about 60-40 split in favor of Democrats rather than Republicans.
Now, when we go to checking for a vice president, this is a little more revealing because it is all Democrats, I guess. Harris is reportedly close to naming her running mate. The poll shows Arizona Senator Mark Harris is doing quite well among those folks. And then, of course, Gavin Newsom, who says he's not in the race, does well. And then kind of a surprise, Mayor Pete is up there among San Diegans. That he has not, he also is not really campaigning for this job. But what does that tell you?
Well, I think this race right now is really a contest of just people in a poll saying, which of those names do I know, right? Andy Beshear, it was not Josh Shapiro were not household names until about a week ago, and are only household names to those of us who are following this VP pick very closely. I think the fact that Not Sure is leading right now is telling, and also the fact that Gavin Newsom is strongly supported in California. Well, that's great. But Kamala Harris needs to win outside of California, and there's this little thing called the Constitution that prevents both members of a ticket from being from the same state.
And finally, we want to get your opinion on, we asked San Diegans who would do a better job in several key issues, and this is a little different than nationwide. It's what stood out is the immigration issue. Harris actually leads Trump by 13% on that issue, something that Trump has made a key part of his campaign and does seem to resonate nationwide, but here in San Diego, Harris actually gets the nod.
I think what you see there is her lead is narrowed when it comes to specific issues, the economy and immigration, compared to what people said when they're asked about their vote choice overall. I think it identifies a clear weakness, so she's probably not going to lose on this issue in San Diego, but in these battleground states, in Arizona and Nevada and Georgia and Michigan and Pennsylvania, can she make the pitch that she's the best person to deal with immigration? When she gave that fiery speech yesterday in Georgia, really accusing Donald Trump of being the person who's standing in the way of progress at the border, that is her pitch to voters on what has just become an ever more salient issue in American politics as the number of border apprehensions has grown during the Biden administration.
Thanks very much for your insight, Dad. Lindsay?
Jim, thank you.